Good morning from San Francisco, and welcome to Technovation's first ever Earth Day fundraiser. My name is Brian Scomer. I lead mentor programs at Technovation. I'm here to present our event to you and our amazing speakers and guests. Today's event is about supporting girls and women solving climate change related issues. Today's event will highlight the climate change solutions of Technovation Girls and what Technovation is doing to empower girls to solve big issues like climate change. You'll get an insight into how young women from different parts of the world feel about climate change. Climate experts and activists will also educate our audience on the realities of environmental issues such as plastics in the ocean, deforestation, your carbon footprint, wildfires, and much more. Through this, we want to show you how empowering girls to tackle big issues like climate change will benefit our local communities and global sustainability. Today is a fundraising opportunity for our Technovation Girl participants. Today and the rest of Earth Month, we are trying to raise enough money to help Technovation reach 80 more girls so that they can lead their communities towards a more sustainable future, just like the Technovation Girls are about to see today. A simple $25 donation introduces a girl to Technovation so she can learn how she can use technology to solve a problem she cares about. And a $500 donation supports one girl to successfully complete our 12-week Technovation Girls program. Through today's event, our goal is to raise $2,000 to again introduce 80 girls to Technovation. We can kick today's event off strong by texting TG Earth Day to 41444. Again, that's TG Earth Day to 41444, or by clicking donate at the top of your page. I'd like to thank those that have already donated. It's very generous of you, and thank you so much. Well, I'm giving you all a chance to check out the donation page. If you want to keep in touch with us after the event, to keep up to date with our amazing Technovation Girls and our work, you can also sign up for our newsletter at the bottom of that live stream page. Just enter your email at that bottom of the page. We would love to stay in touch. So just a bit about who you're going to hear from today. You'll hear a conversation between Elissa Elbaz, long-term supporter of both Technovation and climate causes, as well as alumni teams Project Green Globe and Intellectuals about how they've been combating climate change. You'll hear firsthand how Technovation Girls are making life-altering technologies to help their community become more sustainable and to reduce their carbon footprints. We'll then hear from Deanna Cohen, who is an artist, climate change activist, and co-founder of the Plastic Pollution Coalition, followed by Anna Michelle, who will offer a scientist's perspective on developing technologies for climate change, environment, and ocean health. You won't want to miss hearing from these amazing speakers. After each speaker, you, our audience, will have a chance to partake in a live question and answer session. So please don't miss out, and be sure to add your questions into the chat box, and we'll curate those and ask them to our speakers after they're done presenting. And lastly, we'll hear from our very own Tara Chiklovsky, CEO and founder of Technovation, to give a few closing remarks and exciting news for initiatives to come. So lastly, again, just a reminder why we are all here today, Earth Day. It's to support the young women of Technovation Girls who are making huge strides in climate change and making big differences in their communities and the world. So again, please, if you so choose to do so, text TG Earth Day to 41444 or click the donate button at the bottom of your screen to make a contribution today to support more Technovation Girls. And just a reminder, please cheer on our presenters, add all questions into the comment box at the bottom right of the live stream video. Let's make sure we're all having a good time and supporting each other on today's amazing event. We want to hear from all of you. All right, enough of me. Let's move on to our amazing speakers today. I would love to welcome Elissa Elbaz, a longtime champion for both girls in STEM and plastic pollution reduction. Elissa manages the Elbaz Family Foundation, which supports environmental and educational causes. Elissa obtained her undergraduate degree at Claremont McKenna College and her law degree from UCLA School of Law. Go Bruins. She serves on several nonprofit boards, including the Plastic Pollution Coalition and UCLA Law School's Advisory Board. Everyone, let's give a warm welcome to Elissa.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Bryant. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. I'm thrilled to be here to share my passion for Technovation. I've been honored to be involved with Technovation since its formation. Tara Chklovsky, Technovation's incredible founder, was a friend of ours, and we watched her develop her family science curriculum while she was teaching at USC. When Tara decided to pursue this passion for teaching underserved communities and girls, and she decided to create Technovation, we were proud to give her her first grant to start the organization. What an incredible investment that was. I only wish that all of our grants could yield this kind of return on investment. After that initial grant, I stayed connected with Technovation, serving for about a decade on the board and co-chairing the board at one point. Although I'm no longer a board member, I will always be a champion for Technovation. As Bryant stated, I chair a foundation that supports two causes that are close to my heart: education and the environment. As pertains to the environment, our foundation is particularly focused on plastic pollution. As a lifelong environmentalist, I was stunned about 16 years ago to learn about the ocean gyres that were polluted with plastic. At that time, in the early 2000s, this wasn't an issue that was being discussed, and everyone who I explained the situation to had an equally stunned reaction. Accordingly, I decided to do what I could to amplify the issue. I helped to produce a documentary about plastic pollution, and I got involved with a number of nonprofits who were trying to sound the alarm. I'm thrilled that later in our program, you'll be hearing from Deanna Cohen, who is the executive director of the Plastic Pollution Coalition, whose advisory board I also sit on. The other cause I have devoted much time to is education. Until recently, I considered these to be two distinct causes that were largely unrelated. However, a few years ago, a group of researchers, scientists, and policymakers came together to rank the top 100 activities or interventions that would have the largest effect on climate change and reducing greenhouse gases. That effort was called Project Drawdown. And out of 100 possible interventions to combat climate change, educating girls ranked as the 6th most effective means of combating climate change. Educating girls ranked above solar energy, ranked above electric vehicles, and ranked above mass transit. Educating girls and women is an effective intervention for climate change. This is because research has shown that women with higher levels of good quality education marry later and have fewer and healthier children, live longer, and enjoy greater economic prosperity. And I'll take it one step further. When you arm capable young women with knowledge and technology, as you will soon see, they create solutions. And with that, I would love to introduce you to some amazing young teens and Technovation alumni who have done just that, taken their passion and tech know-how and applied it to some creative solutions to help combat climate change. The first team is Project Green Globe. Team Project Green Globe is made up of 3 high school girls from the California Bay Area. From volunteering at the zoo to fear of wildfires coming too close to a family cabin, each one of them has a personal experience that has led them to be advocates for climate justice. Our next team is Team Intellectuals. It's made up of 5 girls from Nigeria. These girls have been participating in Technovation for the past 5 years and span all ages, with the youngest being 14 and the oldest being 18. Most of the team started their coding journey in 8th grade. Throughout their 5 years with Technovation, they have had one mission: find a way to reduce deforestation in Nigeria with their app. During Technovation, each team made a pitch video that describes their app. We're going to play you a shortened version of each team's pitch video now so that you can better understand their apps and passion for climate justice.
Climate change is unarguably one of the largest problems we collectively face today, and if we do not take action now, ramifications will be endless.
Natural disasters such as flooding, droughts, wildfires, tornadoes, and hurricanes will become much more likely in the future.
We developed the app Ecotopia in order to save our Earth from the startling effects of climate change.
Our goal with the app is to offer easy ways for anyone to get involved in combating climate change through an array of eco-related challenges.
They can browse eco-friendly challenges and pick one that they would like to try. By participating in challenges such as picking up a piece of trash every day or using eco-friendly methods of transportation, users will be able to lessen their impact on the environment with ease.
After each challenge is completed, users will be rewarded with leaf points that they can cash in for real-life rewards such as a tree planted.
With Ecotopia, we hope to provide young adults a platform to unite in the fight against climate change, and together we stand a chance.
Aren't these ladies awesome? Let's welcome them onto the screen and hear more about their projects. Team Project Green Globe and Team Intellectuals, welcome. I'd like to ask you a few questions. The first question I'd like to ask you is, why did you choose to address climate change with your Technovation app? Project Green Globe, would you guys like to answer that question? Thank you.
Yeah, so living in the Bay Area, we all have experienced the firsthand effects of climate change, particularly wildfire season and droughts, which really prompted us to take action in solving this problem in our app. For example, our school has had to shut down days on end due to wildfires only an hour away from our homes, and I remember students would constantly be checking the air quality on their phones, scared to go outside. I remember specifically on September 9th of last year, we woke up to a dark orange, hazy sky due to the wildfires. It was really hard to believe my own eyes and felt almost apocalyptic.
Yeah, the wildfires have also impacted me specifically because of a family cabin that we have up in the mountains. I grew up visiting with my extended family every single summer and winter, so it's an incredibly important place to me, filled with tons of memories. But over the past few years, the wildfires have been particularly bad and have come within a mile of burning this important place down. Seeing the aftermath of the wildfires, the burned trees, the ash on the ground, I was just absolutely heartbroken, and it felt more real to me than any other aspect of climate change before. So being so close to losing a location from my childhood just really opened up my eyes to how devastating climate change is.
Yeah, and for me, animals have always been a really prominent part of my life, and some of my favorite childhood memories include getting my first dog and weekly visits to the Oakland Zoo. And through some volunteer work I've done at the zoo, watching nature documentaries, and also reading the daily news headlines, I've come to realize how detrimental the effects of climate change are and how we all need to come together to fight for a greener world. And some nature documentaries that I've watched in the past year, such as Our Planet, Chasing Coral, and A Life on Our Planet, have both brought into light stories of animals struggling with the underlying effects of climate change and also encouraged me to do something about it. And last year, an image that really impacted me was seeing the viral photo of the starving polar bear roaming a snowless environment in the Arctic. And in my opinion, I definitely think that climate change is inarguably the most depressing issue facing society today, as it has directly affected our generation and the beloved animals that live with us. And this issue will also continue to impact us if we do not act now.
Thank you so much, Project Green Globe. It's so powerful to hear your personal stories of why you were motivated to work on this important issue. Before I ask the same question to Team Intellectuals, I'd love to show a shortened version of their pitch video right now.
Did you know Nigeria loses 1.5 million trees daily due to illegal logging, with the rate of deforestation pegged at 3.5% annually, and is considered the highest globally?
Luckily, there are many things we can do to help save our forests. We have developed Climax, a mobile app that provides a bottom-up approach in addressing climate change through measurable platforms to engage people into carbon-reducing activities.
Users plant trees and batch it up with picture evidence. 10 trees are planted to offset 7 tons of CO2, resulting in 7 carbon credits.
When providing trees for users to plant, we consider carbon sinking capacity. So carefully selected trees that offset carbon best, such as aloe vera, mint plant, palm, English ivy, and so on.
Users sign up into the profile page and then the home screens, including our programs, to plant a tree, select it and choose a pickup date and take a picture afterwards.
Thank you so much. Team Intellectuals, are you there? Great.
Yes.
Thank you. I loved your video, and I'd love to ask you the same question. Why did you choose to address climate change with your Technovation app? Uh-oh, I think we may be having some technical issues with Team Intellectuals. Are you there, Team Intellectuals? We'll give it one more shot. Okay. Okay, well, we're experiencing a few technical difficulties with Team Intellectuals. I think that we'll go on to the next question for Project Green Globe, and hopefully we'll get Team Intellectuals going again soon. So Project Green Globe, how was your Technovation journey, the real Technovation journey? Can you give us some positive highlights and any challenges that you experienced along the way?
Yeah, so one of my favorite parts about the Technovation journey was just being able to work with these two girls on a project that we all really care about. Although we agreed pretty quickly that we wanted to focus on climate change for our project, one of our biggest challenges was coming up with an idea that still felt impactful in the face of this massive and intimidating problem. So this led us to spend a lot more time in the ideation process than we had anticipated, and sort of forced our schedule to be a bit crunched at the end of our journey.
Yeah, but although this was the largest challenge, coming up with a solution was undeniably the most rewarding part of the process. I think that many people feel like they're unable to combat climate change as it is such a large and pressing issue. So we wanted to come up with tangible and simple solutions that anyone could implement into their lives. We were really excited to come up with an interactive app concept that acts as a bridge between the real and technological world and would ultimately allow teenagers globally to join efforts in combating climate change and helping them form a greener lifestyle.
Thank you so much, Project Green Globe. I think that we have Team Intellectuals working now. We're experiencing a few tech issues, but I think that they can hear me now. Team Intellectuals, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? All right, great. So Team Intellectuals, I'm going to ask you the first question, which is, why did you choose to address climate change with your Technovation app?
Okay, so we decided to work on climate change with our Technovation app, basically because where we live, we're mostly surrounded by a lot of dump areas where people just tip their waste, and it wasn't really aesthetically appealing. The smell was terrible, so we decided to work on climate change with our app. So when it rains, these plastics go and clog our drainages, causing intense flooding that caused the death of about 155 people in 2020 and the displacement of 25,000 lives and properties. Okay, so apart from that, we decided to solve this problem with our Technovation app because we realized that deforestation is at its peak in Nigeria with 3.5% annually, to the globe, the largest globally. So one major reason of this, apart from illegal logging, is the use of firewood to cook by women in rural areas. So when I went to my hometown, cooking is meant to be fun for everybody, but right there we don't have modern cooking equipment. So we have to go to the farm or the woods to get firewood, which causes serious health risks and security threats to us because some women going there, they get assaulted or raped. And when they're cooking, they have the opportunity, they could possibly get diseases like lung diseases, pneumonia, or asthma. So we decided to tackle it because of these problems.
Thank you so much, Team Intellectuals. Again, powerful stories of why this issue appealed to you to work on for your Technovation app. I'd also love to ask you about your Technovation journey. Any positive highlights and any challenges that you faced along the way?
Our Technovation journey was really rough at first because we faced a lot of issues. 5 years ago, we were introduced to coding, and it was really hard for us because we couldn't really code at that time. So it was really hard. Our first app was really funny, but as we got better, as we progressed, as we got feedback from our Technovation judges, we realized where we needed to work on, where we needed to get better, where we needed to focus our strengths on. So that's what we did. And our Technovation journey was nice. And our communication was also a really bad thing for us. Those are one of our challenges. But as we got better, we continued to work on that. And I gained a lot of friends and a lot of things from Technovation.
Thank you so much. Wow, it sounds like you've come a long way in your 5 years working on this app.
Yeah.
So another question now to Project Green Globe first, and that is, how did Technovation impact your future or your career goals and self-development?
Yeah, so unlike Team Intellectuals, this was actually our first year doing this app. So I think all of us would agree that Technovation really opened our eyes to the powerful intersection between STEM and business, which is something that we would all like to pursue in our futures. The project really allowed us to put on our entrepreneurial mindsets as we brainstormed innovative and creative ways to tackle climate change using an app, but also, like I said, dip into the world of code as we assembled the actual app interface of Ecotopia.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with everything that Mila said. At school, we're also really encouraged to learn about a variety of social issues, but we don't have many opportunities to act on the things that we learn. And I feel like Technovation encouraging us to pick a problem and then break it down into smaller, more manageable pieces really made me feel more capable of taking action on the things that I care about.
Yeah, I agree with everything Chelsea and Mila said. And as I mentioned before, I'm very passionate about the environment and the animals that live in it. And in college, I would love to study something related to the environment and animals. And I think that definitely the process of developing our app has strengthened that connection and also motivated me to continue exploring this particular career path. And I also hadn't had much experience with business before Technovation. And so I was really excited to dip my toes into what the business world looks like through activities like our business plan and our overall app design.
Thank you so much, Project Green Globe. I think you all have very bright futures ahead of you. I'm going to ask some questions specifically to your team now, to Team Green Globe. Young ladies like you have made it clear that adults have let this generation down when it comes to protecting our planet. What is your generation getting right that my generation didn't?
Yeah, so in our opinion, our generation seems to be taking action and raising awareness for climate change on a larger scale. Like we mentioned earlier, we've all been personally impacted by climate change living in the Bay Area with the wildfire season, and then also the mass amounts of CO2 being released every day living in an urban area. And seeing that this issue impacts us directly and will continue to change our lives in the future, today's teenagers have played an active role in protesting through marches and rallies and also raising our voices for the environment. And so many of my friends, myself, and the people I follow on social media use their platforms to spread information about climate change and also share links for petitions to sign. Also, young activists such as 18-year-old Greta Thunberg inspire world leaders to enact change. And we are the ones experiencing the past generation's mistakes, and then we're also the ones trying to fix it.
Thank you so much, Soraya. Now I'd like you to reveal a dirty little secret to me. Which one of the eco challenges on your app do you find the hardest or most annoying to do? And do you still do it?
Yeah, this is a really fun question. One of our eco challenges on our app is a sustainable transportation option. So this challenge tasks users to carpool with others or walk or bike instead of driving individually. And I think for many people, driving feels so efficient and convenient, and we often forget about the repercussion of driving with all of the carbon emissions. So this challenge is definitely the hardest for me. I'm quite lazy and often settle with driving in order to save time and energy. However, I've been trying my best to walk and safely carpool with others, which are really fun and greener alternatives. And I really recommend you all out there to start implementing more sustainable transportation into your own lives.
Yeah, so another one of our eco challenges was vegetarianism, since the production of animal products emits large amounts of carbon into our atmosphere every day. And I think this challenge was one of the hardest challenges we offered, as it required you to think critically about what you eat and also alter your eating habits. And before we started the Technovation Challenge, I actually became a vegetarian in December of 2019 due to environmental and then also animal welfare reasons. And it was, and also still is, hard to avoid eating meat, as I loved eating chicken and having burgers. But I've adapted to the plant-based meats, such as Impossible and Beyond Beef, to the point where they just taste like regular burger to me, which is really surprising. And I also recommend to try it to anyone who wants to eat plant-based meats. And even though it's like still hard for me to eat vegetarian options, I'm glad that I'm reducing my carbon footprint and making an impact no matter how small.
Thank you, Soraya.
One eco challenge that's just unnecessarily difficult for me is just turning off the lights whenever I leave the room. Especially in the winter months, I think it's really easy to want to keep all of the lights blazing at the same time, but I know it's a huge energy waste and it's not good for the environment. So yeah, I'm really grateful for daylight savings because it's staying light later into the evenings and making it a lot easier for me to help the environment out.
Project Green Globe, are people talking about climate change in Oakland? And what are the conversations like? Do your friends in high school talk about it?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, absolutely. Living in the Bay Area, we find ourselves surrounded by people who care about climate change and are passionate about the environment. There's lots of outdoorsy people that love nature and hiking, etc. And last year, over half of our high school students attended climate marches. So I would definitely say our classmates care about it in the same way that we do. Our school has also always encouraged us to change our habits to be more environmentally friendly. For example, we would have assemblies in lower and middle school, and we would have trash ball competitions where they would give participants a pile of waste that they would have to sort through and try to throw into the correct bucket. So that's compost, recycling, and trash. And so that's just one way that I think that our school in Oakland is trying to teach sustainability and make young people aware of it from a very young age.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. What is one thing on this Earth Day that you would like a listener to do differently after this event?
Yeah, I think that the main takeaway is that if we all unite and take simple steps to combat climate change, we are capable of building an ecotopia. So if you don't know what I mean by ecotopia, like we said earlier, that's the name of our app. And the name Ecotopia explains our mission. Eco is derived from the form ecology, which is a form of biology that studies organisms and the environment. And topia comes from utopia, which is a perfect society. The combination of these two reflects our mission in creating a better, more environmentally friendly world. So even if it's something small, like taking action is the most important thing we can do in order to create this ecotopia. With that said, educate yourself, spread the word, and implement green habits, whether it is walking more to reduce your carbon footprint, turning off your lights, or maybe even becoming vegetarian. Like I said, taking action is the most important thing because as Greta Thunberg said, act as if your house is on fire because it is.
Thank you so much, Mila, Chelsea, and Soraya. I really enjoyed talking to all of you, and I hope that all of you out there enjoyed listening to them. They're very inspiring young women, and I really am so proud of what you've done with your app, and it shows the amazing things that Technovation is doing with these young women. I'm going to turn now to Team Intellectuals. How are you doing, Team Intellectuals? Have we got some good connection going? Can you hear me? Great. Okay, Team Intellectuals. My first question for you is, why have you continued participating in Technovation over the years? And do you see it helping your career development?
Okay, this is actually participating in Technovation, and it has really been wonderful. Our peers kept asking us,
Why do you keep competing in this Technovation competition when you don't win? But we got to realize that Technovation is not all about winning for us, actually. Technovation is not all about winning. As we kept on participating in Technovation, it improved our leadership skill, entrepreneurial skill, and also our team working skill. For the past 5 years of participating in Technovation, I've personally improved. Then I couldn't stand in front of like 3,000 people to make a pitch or make a speech. But as of now, I can stand in front of like 1 million people to make speech, and Technovation has really improved us a lot. My team members here loved taking selfies, they loved taking pictures. It was really hard working with them, like to develop that team working spirit. But after those years, we started learning how to work together as a team, and Technovation has really built us up.
Thank you so much, Virginia. What are some changes that you've made to your day-to-day life after working on these apps?
So after working on these apps, we've made changes in the way we work, the way we do handle plastics. Like we've now seen what the nature gives us, and we appreciate it more. It's a natural human phenomenon to know what to do and not to do it, but we're glad that we're no longer one of these people.
Thank you. And I love your focus on plastic pollution as well. So what is one thing that you want a listener today to do differently after this? Oh, let me see. Is there anything else? Go ahead, sorry.
You're talking to, okay. So I want them all, including us, to have a behavioral change in the way we use plastics, like when we buy goods and collect plastic bags. Okay, so we have to change before our climate does. So make the right decision and start now. Buy reusable bags for your grocery shopping and buy reusable water bottles instead of one-time plastic bags. The change starts with you.
Thank you. Is there anything that you would like to share or comment on in regards to climate change and doing your part to make a change?
Like it is said, a drop of water can make an ocean, and a single tree can make a forest. But when these trees are cut down one by one, the forest will surely fade away. In order to avoid this crisis from continuing and destroying our planet, we should make use of clean cook stoves in place of firewoods, and also recycle tires in form of chairs instead of throwing them away. Make sure you take a step because you are part of the change.
Thank you. So how has your understanding of the climate crisis evolved through your work on different Technovation apps and project development?
Okay, now we understand how nature fights for itself. We understand how it takes away carbon from the atmosphere and utilizes it for our own good. It uses carbon sinks, the forest and the oceans, which are great carbon sinks. But have you ever thought of it that when you cause depletion on one carbon sink, it causes a serious strain. Therefore, cutting down trees and clogging the oceans with plastics is not a good idea. So we take it upon ourselves to do things like carpooling, planting trees, which we did last year after winning a grant to plant 500 trees. We now, we're obviously in an Earth Day fundraiser event. We do a lot of things we never would have done before. Like we have reduced our one-time plastic usage, and now we carry our reusable plastics everywhere we go. So it has really impacted us.
Thank you so much to both teams. It was wonderful getting to know you and hearing about your passion for climate change, for plastic pollution, for entrepreneurship, and for helping to build a more sustainable future. I'm going to pass it back now to Bryant to see if we have time for a few more questions from the audience and if we have any ready to go.
Great. Thank you, Alyssa, for those wonderful questions. Thank you to our teams. My goodness, both teams, you're such rock stars. I think we have a couple questions from the audience that I might ask both our teams. If you're both welcome to answer, who are your climate change role models?
So our climate change role models are Greta Thunberg and Ibrahim Hindel from Chad. And Greta is a young girl. Like when she started fighting against climate change, like the problem, she was just 15 and she was a very determined leader. So when Climax finally becomes a registered company, we would, following the footstep of our role model, we would act like we say by living a low carbon emitting lifestyle. And then also with Ibrahim Hindel's influence, we have been inspired to get our voices heard internationally.
Okay, so we also admire the vice president, the former vice president Al Gore. With his work, he's not just using his position to help economic and all. He's actually using it to save the earth, to let people know what is happening to our earth and prompt action. We really admire these people.
Fantastic. Project Green Globe, any role models?
Yeah, I would just also definitely agree that Greta Thunberg is a huge environmental role model for me, especially considering that she's just 1 year older than me. She's 18 years old. It's just incredible to see what people that are my age are doing to help our planet. So, yeah.
Awesome, fantastic. And then quickly, for both teams, I know Project Green Globe mentioned Impossible and Beyond Meat, but do you have any other favorite sustainability brands?
Yeah, so one brand that I really like is Baggu because they are a reusable bag company and they just have very cute designs. So you can have a stylish bag as you go shopping and help the planet. And then another app that I really love to use is called Depop. It's a clothing resale app, so you can buy and sell clothes secondhand. And this just really helps because it means you're not buying into the fast fashion industry, which has tons of environmental repercussions, water pollution, water waste, greenhouse gas emissions, and that's not even touching on like the ethical issue of child labor. So definitely buying secondhand and using apps like Depop is a great way to help the environment.
Fantastic. Well, does Team Intellectual have a favorite brand? Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, I have one. It's called Nestle. I like the way they are actually taking into consideration to reduce their packaging to be more eco-friendly because normally they make water bottles in plastics, so they're taking an eco process. So I like the fact that they're joining to take action towards the no plastic campaign.
And there's this company called Trashy Bags. They make the bag from fibers and banana. I don't really know how, but like, yeah, they are good. Instead of using trees.
Awesome, that's great. Thank you both teams so much. I'm just listening to you. You know what I'm learning, what I'm seeing. I hope the audience is too. Is we have such a global issue that affects the whole world, climate change, right? But both your teams presented very local community problems caused by this global issue and how it's affecting you locally and how you're driving solutions at the local level to address this problem we're all facing, which I think is so inspiring and just shows we need you. We need both of your teams. We need girls around the world kind of at the front leading our long-term solution. So I just want to say thank you and ask our audience, let's cheer on these teams and give a big thank you in the chat box to our amazing Technovation alumni. Thank you again, ladies, for your continued excitement and your leadership in this line of work. Thank you again to Alyssa for being an amazing Technovation champion. We appreciate you all. So thank you, Project Green Globe and Team Intellectuals. I think from today, we're saying firsthand that Technovation Girls are truly making huge differences in their communities. We need your help expanding their reach and helping other young girls around the world to do the same. So please help us reach our goal of $2,000 by texting TG Earth Day to 41444 or by clicking donate on the side of your screen. And if you so choose to do so, thank you so much for making a donation today. Want to quickly call out thank you to those already donating. I see Bella, Vivian, Daniel, Creighton, Terry, Alexis, Peter, James, Jim, Sue, Gladys, Judy. That's fantastic. I hope I didn't miss anyone. Thank you so much, everyone donating. And let's see, up next on our awesome schedule, we have our guest speaker, Deanna Cohen. Deanna is the co-founder of the Plastic Pollution Coalition, a group that addresses the pervasive problem of plastic pollution. She was inspired to co-found the group by her work as an artist. So my pleasure to introduce Deanna.
Howdy. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I am just totally blown away by both of the teams that we just listened to present. Team Intellectual, I love what you're doing. I would love to learn more about your work. And Project Green Globe, thank you for the great work that you're doing. It's my pleasure just to give you a little bit of my personal story and tell you how I came to the work that I do, and then be able to have a conversation with you. So let's get started. I grew up here in Southern California. This actually is not a picture of Southern California. It's a picture of Greece. And it's the island that my maternal grandfather was born on, so my mom's dad. And I've been involved in a project there called Plastic Free Island for the last 8 years. And I'll get to that. But I just put this picture, I wanted to start out with it by just letting you know that I grew up here loving the ocean and having a really strong connection to it. And I'm going to take off my glasses because they're reflecting everything. Having a really strong connection to the ocean. And I studied biology and art at UCLA. And at the time, which was quite some time ago, I tried to dual major, which wasn't really a possibility, but I hear from young people that I meet every day now that you can dual major in the arts and in the sciences, which I think is really exciting. And if I were doing it again, that's where I would go. So I've been making artwork for the last 30 years out of plastic bags that I cut up and sew back together. This is a piece called Rainbow Us. It's made out of plastic bags I cut up. I sew them together. We can go on to the next piece. This is called Recycle Man. I started getting really interested in not just the colors of plastic bags, but also the images that I found printed on them. I found a lot of irony in that. Oftentimes they print images of plants or flowers or animals onto bags. And what you have to realize is plastic bags were introduced really, I think in about the 70s, late 70s, and came into popular use as a way to solve the problem of cutting down trees. So when you were at the supermarket in the United States, at least my experience, they offered you a bag and they would say paper or plastic. And we all thought that by choosing plastic, we were doing something that was good for the planet and we were saving a tree. So I've been making artwork out of plastic bags, as I said, for a number of years. This is a flag that I made. It's a piece called Wave Lens. And this piece was made to, when I had this idea in 2007, 2008, I kept hearing about a lot of plastic in the Pacific Ocean and this kind of gyre system forming. And that it was, our friend Charlie Moore had named it the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of that, but I had this idea to design a flag to get a cargo ship and some decommissioned fishing trawlers and go out there and start harvesting the plastic, make it into art pieces, cold mold it into bricks, figure out a way to utilize that material. And I was under the impression that it was just a floating island, which I've come to understand it's actually not. It's more like a smog that's spread out in all of the ocean. So that said, I continued to make artwork about it. I continued to think about how I could come up with solutions. This is a large piece I made. It's 25 feet long. So what is that? 5 meters, am I doing the math wrong? 3 meters long. It was called The Bridge, and I made this for an exhibition at the Ben Maltz Gallery. And what I found is in my artwork, and as I was learning about what was happening in the ocean with plastic, I began to bring those two ideas together. Some of the pieces, in some of my bags in the pieces I was working on were fissuring or breaking into smaller bits. And the scientist part of me said, well, what does this really mean? Does this mean it's organic and ephemeral? Is it like us? Is it like a flower or a plant? Is it going back to nature? And as I educated myself further, I found that that's not the case. That's not what happens with plastic. Plastic pretty much is this, material that will last forever in a sense. And though it does break into smaller pieces, it gets into the environment, it gets into the ocean, our rivers, our lakes, our waterways, and we're now learning that it's getting into our food. It's ingested by wildlife in the ocean. Many people depend on sea life and fisheries for their primary source of protein in the world. And so it is coming back to us in that way, but it also comes back to us through agriculture. We're also finding plastics in, the air, in samples of water, in bottled water samples, in honey, in beer, in all different kinds of materials that we use. So I kept seeing more and more plastic in the ocean, and I would tie it, grab it, tuck it into the side of my bikini, tie it to my bathing suit, come out of the water and begin to look for a garbage can or, a recycling container, depending on where I was. Here in Southern California, again, I'd look for that. But also when I had the opportunity to travel to other places in the Mediterranean, I was always looking for places to grab this plastic out of the water and clean it up and put it into what I thought it would be recycled. I think that all of us really were believing in recycling, and I still believe in recycling, but what we've come to learn in the United States is that very little of the plastic here is recycled. This is an image from Bahia, Brazil, a friend of mine took and sent to me, and it's a place I like to include this image because if you take your hand and you put it up over a part of your screen and you just block the lower foreground of the image and you see that beautiful landscape in the distance with the water and the trees, it could be anywhere in the world that you're looking down a beach. But I have now seen this in very remote parts of the world, places where no one lives. And what it made me realize is that plastic knows no boundaries when it gets into the environment. And it's everyone's problem. And we have to follow it back upstream and look for the different source points. So we can move through these quickly, these images. I just included them so that you could see often, our beaches are turning into these kind of plastic jumbles where we used to find sea glass, and that would be a treasure, but a lot of the sand on beaches is made up of silica and broken down degraded seashells, etc. We're now finding quite a bit of plastic, and on some beaches I've been on in different parts of the world, it can be 5 feet deep. So we are creating plastic beaches with our use of this material, and it really, really needs to change. We need a massive system shift. Part of the problem is that plastic production has increased so exponentially over the last 10 years. And what you have to realize is there's a strong connection between climate change and what we are trying to do to address this right now, what we must do, and plastic production. Because plastic is primarily made out of oil and byproducts of processing petroleum, fracking and cracking, etc. So excavating materials from the ground, transforming them by adding these other groups of chemicals to them, and then shaping and forming them into oftentimes materials or packaging that have been designed to use for a very short amount of time, if it's single-use plastic, but will potentially last for 100, 200, 400 years. We don't know how long. So what you have to realize is that plastic is the petrochemical industry's plan B. So we can continue. These are microplastics, and oftentimes they've been used in beauty products like whitening toothpaste or facial scrubs to replace what were natural materials like sand or ground up apricot pits or different natural materials, ground up coconut and stuff like that, coconut shell. And the problem with these is they're so small. Those are microplastics on top of a penny. A penny is only, this big. So if you imagine each time you wash your face or you brush your teeth with a product that's got these materials in it, these are washing down the drain and they end up in our waterways, in our ocean, recycled back in systems for municipal water systems for cities, and it's a real problem. So microplastics are a big problem. Next. This is an image that I used I want to just include it. We can go through these images quickly. This helps me think about not just the gyre that I was concerned about out in the ocean, but the gyre of plastic that we find in the supermarket or the market when we go to buy food, in our refrigerator. And I'm concerned also really about the chemicals that leach out of plastics like phthalates and bisphenols. These chemicals are used to make the plastic transparent, translucent, supple, malleable, colored, to shape it, to form it, but they also leach into us and they leach into our food and beverage that we package in them. And these chemicals have been linked to a number of different health issues, including fertility issues, diabetes, obesity, and cancer, among others. So we can go right by that. I'm also concerned about what's happening with animals ingesting plastics. Obviously, they can be entangled in it, but oftentimes animals misperceive plastics because of the colors, reds and oranges, etc. in the water. Lace and albatross gather them and feed them to their babies. And these are birds that were documented at Midway Atoll in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. They regurgitate these, they feed it to their babies, and their babies die in situ with their stomachs full of plastic. So I really feel that we as human beings are producing plastic and stuffing ourselves full of plastic and not realizing that we're doing it, and the chemicals from plastic. So, obviously I'm very impressed with the work that these young women are doing who are part of Technovation, because I think that we have the power to stop plastic pollution and to really solve this problem. In 2009, I came together with others and we created Plastic Pollution Coalition. We're a global coalition. We're now over 1,200 organizations and businesses from 75 different countries around the world, and it's free to join us. So I invite all of you to join us and utilize any resources or materials or educational materials that we have on our site. They're all just there and available to you for free. I wanted to share some work by other artists. We can just move through these quickly. That's an artist from Spain. These are some young girls in Belize who worked with Pam Longobardi, who's the next artist, the next image I wanted to show. She was commissioned to make a piece for the cover of Sierra magazine that is made entirely out of recovered plastics that they found on that beach in Belize. Pam and I also made these interventions for the Natural History Museum in Greece together a few years ago, and they allowed us to put them in their dioramas and their displays. This was a Triceratops skeleton, and we were allowed to put polystyrene that we'd collected from a cave in Greece in our Plastic Free Island project around the base of the dinosaur. Next. This is work by Alvaro Soler Arpa. He's an artist who makes these imaginary contemporary dinosaur pieces, life-size sculptures, and then stuffs the chest cavity and the abdomen with plastic and plastic pollution. And for me, again, these are really metaphors to talk about the issue. This is Virginia Fleck. She makes pieces, giant mandalas out of plastic bags that she collects and connects together. You can recognize some of the bags, maybe if you are familiar with some of these brands. Next. This is Raymond Pettibone. He made a small painting for us with plastic floating in the ocean. As an artist, I've really tried to live in this nexus between art and science and communication, and utilizing all of these tools and figuring out how we're going to communicate with other people, help educate them, raise awareness, about the toxic impact of plastics, and move towards a world free of plastic and plastic pollution. So our first campaign was to ask people to refuse single-use plastic. And I try to encourage folks all the time to think reusable and not disposable. We did a project with Bonnaroo Music Festival here in the United States called Refill Revolution, and that's grown into a whole website, which is called byobottle.org. And it was put together by a whole bunch of different groups across the US and from a couple other countries, including Australia, who are implementing programs that focus on reuse, reusability, and refill. This is my colleague, Yvette Ariano, who just launched Fence Line Watch. She's based in Houston, Texas, and she lives in a community that is on the fence line, on the front line. Her neighborhood is right nearby ExxonMobil. And there's about 66 miles of petrochemical build out there. So she's really on the front line addressing the health impact to her community, the safety impact to her community, and again, found common cause with us in the work that they're doing, which obviously is directly related to addressing climate, but it's climate, health, petrochemical industry, oil, burning fossil fuels, burning plastic. This is Jackie Nunez. She founded The Last Plastic Straw. I wanted to include some of the amazing women and young women that I work with, that I've come in contact with, who have come up with really interesting approaches and solutions. Jackie wasn't just focused on straws, but she created this group with the intention that if we looked at a plastic straw, what she was really talking about was the material, and that material and that focus on something as simple as a straw could take you as a key into understanding the greater global plastic pollution issue, help you realize that this was important, that we needed to change policy, not just here in the United States, but around the world, and also to understand that it's really about the material. This is a demonstration that was organized by a bunch of our colleagues, but many, many passionate young women who delivered a signed petition to the headquarters of Starbucks in Seattle and put together a giant Starbucks cup monster to encourage them to move away from single-use cups. The thing I think I'm the most proud of, and I wanted to bring up Hannah Testa, she's one of our youth ambassadors, but she's a young woman who at age 14 launched a bipartisan Atlanta Plastic Reduction Day that she created with support from both parties. And we had her speak at the initial rally when we introduced the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which was last year in 2020. And it's just been reintroduced in a new, even more comprehensive form this year. And it's very exciting. It's a historic piece of policy. It's an enormous bill that has all these different facets to it and takes on a restructuring and support of recycling systems, but also helps support and supplement refill systems, reuse systems, and policy and legislation to help reduce our use of and creation of so many single-use plastics and the fact that those are getting out into the world. So that's Hannah. Her group's called Hannah for Change. And let me just share with you, there are, that I'm aware of, 3 different apps that are focused on when you do cleanups, or if you're interested in any kind of beach cleanup or city cleanup, river cleanup, lake cleanup, neighborhood park, etc., school ground. There are 3 different apps. This one's called Marine Debris Tracker. The next one is, I believe, Literati. And the one after that is called Trash Blitz. And I wanted to focus on Trash Blitz for a minute because they were one of the first apps that really focused on adding brand audit data. So there's a whole instructional part to this, but also to, you can find it at breakfreefromplastic.org or through our site, from plasticpollutioncoalition.org. And it's the idea of adding brand audit onto any cleanups that you do so that you count and identify any brands that you're able to when you do a cleanup, and what's happened with all these apps. The first one, Marine Debris Tracker, was created by Jenna Jemback. She's a scientist. And the second one was created by a guy named Jeff Kirchner, literati. And this one was created by Five Gyres, which is an organization which is part of our coalition and part of the greater Break Free from Plastic movement that we helped found. And these are important because they empower you with tools. And I wanted to just share these at the end because I think it's so important to imagine tools, but not just tools that are going to solve something at the end of life of these materials or the end of use of these materials, but continue to look upstream in a proactive way to create apps that will help us shift the system, change the system, change the narrative, and normalize what it looks like to live plastic free. So I'll give you an example. There's a call for an opt-in addition to all of these different food delivery services, which have really exponentially exploded, particularly during the last year with COVID. So people having food delivered to them at home, delivered to them at work. And oftentimes we don't need to have plastic utensils and plastic stirrers and plastic straws and little tiny condiments in plastic packaging delivered to us, particularly if we're ordering something at home. And so a whole group of us, a whole group called Reusable LA, which was founded by a bunch of wonderful young women, and also Reusable New York, focused on this and engaged with companies here called Postmates. They've been talking with Grubhub, all these different delivery services to encourage them to add an opt-in button so that people need to ask for those single-use utensils and materials if they would like to have them additionally with their order. And not only have these companies embraced it and added it as a button into their existing apps, but it's now just passed for law in Los Angeles County, which happened yesterday morning, which is pretty monumental. So I say all of that to you guys, hopefully to inspire you, but also to say, if you're interested in any of this and you are based in the US, I would encourage you to help support the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. You can learn more about it at our site or just by doing a search on it. And letting your representatives know that this is something that's important to you. I'm really honored, actually so honored to be speaking to you guys on Earth Day, and I want to wish everyone a really happy Earth Day. And we have a lot of work to do, but I think through technology, we're going to move the dial quickly. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Deanna. What a fantastic presentation. Just learning so much and thankful for you spotlighting all the work that's happening right now, the art, the activism. It's just great to see. In the comments on the thread, there's so much appreciation for your art and people are really just in awe of the work you're doing. Just quickly, I think we have about a minute before transitioning. I asked the girls some of their role models, and you have such a unique blend of art and activism. When you were just getting started connecting plastic pollution with your art, who were some of your either art world role models or environmental role models that was helping to motivate and drive your work?
Well, one of my big role models has been Sylvia Earle. We also call her deepness. She's a marine biologist, but she's kind of an accidental activist, as I am, when she realized that it was in her heart to try and help people understand that we need to save the ocean, the blue heart of the planet. But I think in saving the ocean, we save ourselves because we live on a highly unique planet and life is able to exist on this planet because of water and because of the ocean. So Sylvia is a big role model to me, but also a number of my interns and several of the daughters of friends of mine have really been my mentors as well. I feel like I've learned a lot from young people that I know, and I feel that we're in really good hands. I listen to how young people approach this. I understand that they're able to grasp the larger picture, the larger concept, and the idea that You know, plastic is directly connected to climate and climate change. When we use plastic or when we burn it at the end of its life through incineration, waste to energy, waste to fuel, all of these different solutions are not really solutions. They poison us, they poison the planet, and we need to come up with smarter ways to use this material as a valuable resource and not as something that's designed to be thrown away. And I think these young women that I know, like Hannah for Change, obviously watching Greta Thunberg is so inspirational, but Laura and Richie, and has a group called Eco Justice Project. There are young women who are doing incredible work with this. And it's going to be very, very important, that intersectionality between everything that we care about, that we're passionate about, and that we want to change.
Love that. Thank you so much, Deanna. I think Technovation agrees. You know, we have to be inspired by young women. It's our responsibility to be inspired by young women and let them drive this change. So thank you again so much for your presentation. We're grateful to have you a part of this community today. Now transitioning, it's now my pleasure to introduce our next guest, Dr. Anna Michel. Dr. Michel is an associate scientist in the Department of Applied Ocean Physics and Engineering at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Her research focuses on the development of new in situ sensors and sensing platforms for advancing our understanding of ocean chemistry, specifically to measure greenhouse gases and plastics. Dr. Michel teaches in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution Joint Graduate Program, and runs a 4-day summer program for middle school girls. Dr. Michel completed a postdoctoral fellowship at Princeton University as the Amurth Center Research and Teaching Fellow. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Anna Michel to you all.
Hi, it's great to be here. I have to apologize, for some reason my iPad just kicked me out, so we're gonna have to do this just from my laptop, so hopefully that's okay. I'm really excited to be here. I loved seeing those presentations by the girls earlier. Teaching girls about STEM education is a huge passion of mine, so I'm really excited to see this. I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen and show you what some of the work that my lab is doing. I'm not sure, can we see that? Seems like we're not seeing it. Perhaps somebody in the back can actually just pull up the presentation to share. Great, thank you. So again, I'm Anna Michel, and I'm a scientist at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and I'm going to talk today about my lab's research on measuring marine plastics. So if you could go to the next slide. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm an ocean engineer. You can see me in the top left there at sea. I spend a lot of time working on measuring chemicals in the ocean. So my lab uses a lot of different vehicles. You can see in the bottom left, that's an ROV, so a remotely operated vehicle that we use to explore the ocean. We also work a lot in the Arctic. You can see that in the bottom right. There's a vehicle there, which we call the ChemYak, which measures methane and carbon dioxide, very important greenhouse gases, in places like the Arctic, where we're seeing a lot of climate change impacts. So most of my research actually has started out measuring greenhouse gases in these really unique environments. Next slide, please. So in my lab, we measure these different chemicals in environments ranging from estuaries, which you can see on the bubble on the right. We work in the deep ocean. You can see some really interesting pictures of hydrothermal vents, methane seeps, submarine volcanoes, and then in the left side, you can see the Arctic. So this is what my lab has really been working on a lot, is measuring these important greenhouse gases. Okay, next slide, please. And if you can click and see if the video works, that would be great. Okay, we may not have the video, but what I wanted to show you is that we work in these really beautiful underwater environments. This is a hydrothermal vent in the Gulf of California off of Mexico. And this is very deep down in the ocean. Now, this site that we went to and that we explored with an underwater vehicle had only been visited once before with an underwater vehicle. Now, if you go to the next slide, you can see what we found at this site. So it's a little bit hard to tell what this is, but this is actually a balloon. So you can see kind of the stripes. It was like a picture of a zebra on the balloon, and you can see the pink ribbon off the side. And you can see that this balloon ended up about 2.3 miles deep into the ocean. Now, this site, as I said, had only been visited once before. So here we are at this site that is very pristine, and here was plastic. So this got me thinking about what could we do in my lab to understand the plastics problem. So some of the technologies we've developed in my lab for measuring greenhouse gases in the environment, we actually can apply to studying plastics in the ocean. Next slide, please. So we have some questions we want to answer. For example, what happens to plastics when they enter the ocean? Next slide. Okay, next slide. So it's estimated that each year, about 3 to 8 million tons of plastics enter the ocean. So that means there's about 150 million tons of plastic in the ocean. But we can only account for less than 1% of the total by surface sampling. So where is the rest of the plastic? That's one of the questions that we really want to be able to answer. Next slide. So my lab started a project where we're looking at macroplastics. So these are macroplastics that are collected in Alaska. Next slide. And the reason to understand macroplastics first is because macroplastics can become microplastics. Now, some of you may not know what microplastics are. So if you look at the pictures in the bottom, you can see there's plastics in the ocean. Things like glitter, that's about the size of a microplastic if you want to imagine them. And in the bottom right, you can see the tiny little microplastics, microbeads that have occurred in personal care products. So what happens is as macroplastics enter the ocean, or even on the land, they can be broken down into microplastics. It can happen by abrasion. It could be different salinities can cause the breakdown, freezing and thawing. So a lot of different processes that go on naturally can cause a macroplastic to become a microplastic. Next slide, please. So microplastics are of a concern because they can enter the food chain. We saw that in our speaker just earlier. So humans can eat fish, and we know that these fish can actually consume microplastics. So this makes us want to understand, well, what is the impact of these microplastics on the ocean, and is there a human health connection? Next slide. So in my lab, we're looking at the idea that we're hypothesizing that some chemicals will leach out to the plastic and other chemicals will actually adsorb onto the plastic. So next slide. So what does this mean? So plastics, when they're made, have additives, stabilizers, and colorants, and they actually can release some of these chemicals. So one of the things we're interested in is what happens to these plastics as they enter the ocean. When these things leach out, or do they leach out, it's possible that they're toxic. So we're really interested in what happens to the plastics as it enters these environments. How do they change? Next slide, please. So adsorption means that the molecules actually adhere to the surface of the plastic. So if you can see in the picture on the left, that's what adsorption is, and absorption is what's on the right. So we're really interested in, can we look at what's actually adhering to the surface of the plastics in the ocean? Next slide, please. So in my lab, we're really interested in some big key questions. So what metals do we find on plastics after they've been in the ocean? Are these metals different on different types of plastics? And what happens when we compare plastics found in different locations? So what we've done is we've started to develop a global database of plastic samples. Next slide, please. So we've been collecting plastics from global beaches all around the world. So for example, here's some plastics we collected at a beach in France. You can see the plastic in the bottom left that can be very small. We can also find plastics that we really don't want to collect, such as that one in the middle. Next slide. We did a big field project in Alaska where we were studying something completely different. And while we were there, we collected all of the plastics that we could find on these remote Alaskan islands. You can see the bottom left, a big pile of the plastic we found. You can see one of our undergraduates who'd found a plastic shoe in one of these locations. Next slide. Even in beautiful Hawaii, we were at this beautiful place in the bottom left, and there on the beach where we could find a bunch of plastics. You can see those in the bottom right. So you can see that at all these beaches around the world, we're able to collect a lot of different plastics. Next slide. So what we do is we collect these plastics, we sort them, we make a lot of measurements on them. You can see another undergraduate here who is making some measurements of these plastics. Next slide. And then what we do is we use an instrument called an FTIR ATR. And the important thing here is we can use this instrument to identify what kind of plastic it is. So if you see that kind of squiggly plot in the top right, that's a spectrum, and that can tell us what kind of plastic it is. So in that bottom right, that's a microscope image of a microplastic that we've taken. So we use this instrument to say what kind of plastic we found in these environments. Next slide. We also use an instrument called an XRF, an X-ray fluorescence spectrometer, and we can use this to actually identify what kind of metals are found on the plastics. That can help us to answer the question of what happens to the plastics when they enter the ocean. Next slide. So we have to date collected over 1,000 plastic samples that we've analyzed from beaches all around the world. Many of the plastics we found are from consumers and also from fishing gear, and some plastics have very high concentrations of metals on their surface. We're still going through this data and trying to analyze and understand what's actually happening to these plastics in the ocean. Next slide. So then the question comes up, how much microplastic is there in the ocean? Next slide. So there's lots of different kinds of plastics, but there's pretty much 6 main types of plastic. And one of the problems with trying to understand how much plastic is in the ocean, especially microplastics, is that some plastics float, like polypropylene, HDPE, LDPE. Some polystyrenes float, and some of them sink. Some other plastics like PVC and PET actually sink. So trying to understand where the plastic is means it's more than just taking a net out. We've got to actually look at all different layers of the ocean. So we've got to go through the whole midwater and also look at the sediment layer. Next slide, please. So how do people collect microplastics? Well, right now, most people actually go out with a net and they filter the water and they collect them on a sieve and they hand pick out the plastics. Well, as you can imagine, this is not a very good way to be collecting plastics, making a very time-intensive process. So our goal in our lab, where we develop sensors to measure things like chemicals in the ocean, is to be able to develop sensors that can actually identify plastics in the ocean. Next slide. So we use infrared spectroscopy to do our gas measurements. Well, infrared spectroscopy can also be used to identify different kinds of plastics, even if they've been out in the environment. So we've been able to take plastics that we've collected and can actually identify what kind of plastic it might be. Next slide. But we want to go further than that. We want to be able to have instruments that we can put out in the ocean, put on ships, and take out to even ponds locally, and be able to measure what kind of plastics they are. So if you see in the bottom left, you can see some little critters next to some microplastics. You can see kind of a sense of scale. So we want to be able to flow water through our instrument and say, yes, this is a plastic, or no, this is not a plastic. So in the top, you can see our instrument. It uses a technique called impedance spectroscopy, where we actually send it through. We make a measurement to say it is a biological or it's a plastic. And the plot on the bottom, the only thing I want you to notice is that we can actually separate out with this instrument what's a plastic and what is not a plastic. So this is a very beginning stage project, but we hope we'll one day be able to take this out and make some more measurements. Next slide. So this is the project that the sensor we're developing. We hope to do some field tests this summer. This is kind of a schematic of what we think it'll look like, where we can actually take it out, pump seawater through it, and identify whether something is a microplastic or not. As you can imagine, this is a lot different than actually hand picking out plastics to make measurements. So we're hoping this can really change our understanding of how many microplastics are actually in the ocean. Next slide, please. So our goal is to couple new sensors to underwater vehicles. You can see this image here of lots of different instruments and buoys underwater. So we'd love to be able to put our instruments on these kinds of vehicles. And yep. So why is this research important? Well, plastics are continuing to enter the marine systems. Marine microplastics represent a potential impact to human and ocean health. And the science of microplastics is really emerging. We don't have the answers to a lot of these questions that we want to know. And also, leaders in government and industry need the scientific evidence in order to make sound decisions. So if you'd like to learn more, microplastics.hui.edu talks a lot about the microplastics initiative at Hui. And also there's my email address if anybody has any additional questions or wants more information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Michelle. What a great presentation. Had an interesting question come up that I'd love to ask you. The audience asked, is any plastic really recyclable?
Wow, that's a good question. I would hope so. I mean, I think that the question comes up, I think, when we think about plastics that are, say, multi-layered plastics. So a lot of times things like chip bags and stuff are much harder to recycle because they're multi-layered plastics together. I would sure hope that all my plastic that I'm putting out is actually being recycled.
Yeah, Definitely. I'm curious to ask, so much of your work right now is so hands-on, with collecting data and experimenting. And was there something when you were in grade school or high school, like a hands-on experiment that was just an aha moment that was like, I need to get involved in this kind of work, in the future, this kind of hands-on scientific work?
Definitely. No, there was definitely an experience. And I actually spent a lot of time on STEM education for that reason. So many of you know about the Discovery of the Titanic by Dr. Bob Ballard. When I was in high school, I had the amazing fortune to be able to go on a research cruise that was run by a project called the Jason Project. It was an outreach program. And I went to the Galapagos Islands on a research cruise when I was in high school. And I turned to the person that was driving the ROV on the ship I was on and said, well, how do you get to do this for a career? And they said, study engineering. And I was just blown away by the fact that you could be an oceanographer for a career. I hadn't really considered that. And so that kind of took me down the path. I studied engineering, and here I am as an ocean engineer. So definitely a high school experience changed my life.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing that. I just want to thank you again for presenting to us today. The Technovation community is so thankful to have you today and a part of our community. So yeah, everyone in the chat, give your thanks to Dr. Michelle, and thank you again. So yeah, kind of getting to the end of our speakers. Before we get to Tara, I just want to say it's so wonderful to hear from real life influencers like all of our speakers today. And just like them, you all who are tuning in at home can also make a difference for girls around the world by donating to Technovation Girls today. It looks like right now we are at $1,613, which is awesome and getting so close to our goal of $2,000 through this campaign. Again, if you're just now maybe considering donating, you can do that by texting TG Earth Day to 41444. You can also click the donate button on the side of your screen. I mentioned earlier, a $25 donation exposes one girl to get involved with Technovation, and $500. If we hit that amount, it allows us to get one girl through our entire 12-week program to make a real difference, as you saw today, in communities, their local communities, addressing real problems. It looks like since last time I gave a thank you, we've added some more donators. I just want to thank Elissa, Lorraine, Eva, Naji. Thank you so much. As I mentioned, we'd love to keep in touch. If you chose to donate today or maybe at a later time, we'd love to be in touch with all of you. So please sign up for our newsletter at the bottom of the page by entering your email. So again, if you would like to donate, if you know there's a friend or colleague that would also like to donate, please share the information to text TG Earth Day to 41444, or please click donate at the side of your screen. So yeah, again, thank you to everyone who donated. Thank you to everyone attending and listening to our amazing speakers and contributing to our goal of making the world a better and cleaner place to live, led by our amazing Technovation girls and young women around the world. So to close out our event, please help me in welcoming Technovation's founder and CEO, and my amazing boss, Tara Chiklovsky.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Brian. This was such an awesome lineup of folks, especially to see the girls, especially to hear from the Nigerian team participating 5 years in a row. I mean, that's our dream, to be able to provide meaningful opportunities to girls year over year and help them as they grow. Today is a special day. I mean, it's Earth Day, but for some of you, if you know, it's also Girls in ICT Day. And I think the combination of this is just perfect. Technovation is that, where we want to provide powerful technologies to amazing young women leaders. And as you see, the girls talk about using mobile apps and changing our values, changing our norms. I think technology is a very, very powerful way to do that, because it brings accountability and it provides transparency to grassroots activities. So For instance, I think yesterday I was listening to a talk by the Pulitzer Prize Center about how using satellite imagery, we can actually have real-time data on deforestation across so many different areas, and that is possible to do because of technology. So we can protect what we need much better. And as we can see with mobile apps, when Technovation Girls create these apps that maybe tag places that forests are being burned, or tag places. I think there was an app in Egypt there where it was providing farmers with solutions to, instead of clear cutting and burning down their crops, it was giving them options to connect with local places that would take the straw off of their farms. So just providing so much power to individuals is the magic of technology. I also wanted to highlight one very important piece, that we need to mindfully invite young girls to the conversation. Too often I hear, oh, girls are not interested. I would say, don't even go there. Just always start, like, if there's an interesting program, if there's an opportunity, just invite girls to be part of the conversation. One of my favorite quotes from a Technovation alumni is like, before this experience, nobody even bothered to ask me what I thought about this problem. So invite girls to ask them, what do you think about this problem? And it is never too early. I've had very interesting, meaningful conversations with young girls as young as 6 years of age. 6 years. It's just that nobody ever thinks that these young people have ideas to contribute and to teach. So I love what Diana said, that never underestimate what they're capable of. And I wanted to share a little bit about this year. I mentored 4 Technovation teams. It was not easy, but I'm a working mom. But one of the things that I found is that if you can double up on activities, it's a highly effective way to bring purpose into your life, but also to help others. And a couple of the teams that I was mentoring were dealing with climate change issues, and one was dealing with the issue of ocean pollution. And through that journey, I realized that there's so much that each person can be doing, starting with changing your value system. I think one of the teams talked about, like, it's so hard to not drive places and not use plastic. So one very basic thing we started to do was to weigh how much plastic as a family we throw out on a weekly basis. And what we realized was every week we use basically 5 pounds of plastic. And when we started to document whether we could get rid of that, it was kind of hard. And so it kind of brings you up against this, that this is a large problem, but we have to chip away at it little by little. And I wanted to share this little book with you. It's very thin. You'll read it in one sitting. But one idea, it's by an indigenous writer, activist in Brazil. One idea he said was, today we think of ourselves, so much of the language around what we do is that of a consumer. We've stopped using the term citizen. And I thought that was so interesting, that everybody talks about users and consumers, and the capitalistic language and materialistic language is everywhere. But we've stopped using the term citizen. That means when you think of citizen, you have a very different framework, where I am in charge of protecting my area. I'm in charge of looking after others. But if I think of myself as a consumer, it's only, am I getting what I want? Is my product good? So it's a very different mindset. And I thought that was an interesting insight. And the other book that I want to share is this one. It's called Green Thoughts. It's a collection of 72 amazing essays about gardening. There's a woman, Elena Perini. She's an incredible writer, and it's just exceedingly funny. And I've started to compost, and it's very difficult. I have lots of flies in my compost. I have to figure out the right recipe, but it's fun. And I think these are the kinds of things that little changes in our behavior are going to just help us integrate and change our values. So I wanted to end by sharing what are some things that are upcoming. for Technovation. We just wrapped up our season. We have a special climate prize this year, a special prize on AI. And for the next season, we are thrilled to say that we're going to be partnering with the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs to really empower more young people around the world to use satellite imagery data, space data, combined with AI and mobile technologies to tackle climate issues, because these very, very powerful technologies are what's needed in the hands of dedicated, inspiring, innovative young people. So that's a little bit of what lies ahead, but we cannot do this without your support. I think Technovation, as you know, is a completely free online curriculum plus network of incredible supporters. And it takes an army of roughly 10,000 adults who are volunteering their time to bring this kinds of awareness and agency to young people. But that doesn't happen without financial resources. So we are so grateful to each of you for donating, for listening to our story, for seeing the impact that we are making. This is our 15th year in existence. COVID shook us very, very hard, but we have recovered. We are coming back, and we need you to be part of the journey. So thank you, everyone, and I look forward to the next season with you.